are opening our conference today. So the first speech is from our president, Diana Guest. Please applause to Diana Guest.
So I want to welcome you to the 25th Biennial IIBA Conference. Just think, the first conference was 50 years ago. Yeah. We may speak many different languages, but we all speak the language of the body. I think it's so amazing that we all do the same thing, bioenergetic analysis, in our own way that fits our country, our culture, and our personality. Right now, the situation in the world is dire. Many of us are frightened, even terrified by the movement toward oppression, repression, hatred, and attack on the integrity of the body and the soul. We on the Board of Trustees, who met these few days prior to this conference, are engaged in work to mature ourselves and the organization of the IIBA as a place to face these forces and build a ground of hope for connection and humanity. We invite you to share with each other what you are doing and join us in a common effort to achieve this result. I'd like the Board of Trustees, if you would all stand up now. I'll introduce you individually in the membership meeting, but if you're on the board, please stand. The theme of the conference is a bioenergetic view of love, healing, connection, and authenticity. Look at the number of people here because of the theme, because we value love, authenticity, and healing connection. We come together as a community of like heart and mind from around the globe. Because we are so far apart, and the world is filled with life-destructive actions, as well as life-affirming, it is important for us to support and encourage each other in work that is still seen as revolutionary. As we gather this week, we will be enriched by the program organized by the organizing committee and the scientific committee. As we listen to keynote addresses and attend afternoon workshops, we will see where our work has developed in theory, practice, and application. We will see the creativity of our colleagues. I do need to make a comment about the workshops. You're all requested to bring a pillow to your workshop, even if it's not written in the program. Okay. So bring that pillow. That's a transitional object. We have morning exercises. We have 2 interviews. One is with Virginia Hilton, and the other is with Robert Lewis. 2 of the pioneers are pioneers in bioenergetic analysis. Scott Baum will be interviewing Virginia through Zoom, and Ron Panvini will interview Bob Lewis in person. You'll learn about the responses from the survey that was sent out. and you will have an opportunity to share your successes and challenges within your societies. You will learn about the Board of Trustees' work over the last 2 years, so be sure to join this global meeting. So I've told you some of what to expect this week. So as I was preparing my opening talk, I was reviewing my opening at the conference in Toronto, and it seemed appropriate to me to repeat some of what I said there. Plus, it was less work. So why do we gather every 2 years? We are here because we're here to celebrate the 25th IIBA conference. But why are we here? Why are you here? What moved you to spend the money and take time off from work to come to this conference? I've asked myself this question, and here are some of my answers. I know that I am here to connect, to see friends and colleagues that live halfway around the world, or just a few hours away, that I haven't seen for a while, and now I get to talk to them in person, not over some electronic device. I am here to meet new people. I am here to feel my sense of belonging to a global community. This community that works to tolerate differences, to struggle through differences, to debate differences, to celebrate differences, rather than suppress our difference, and to discover the common ground we share as organismic human beings. Our dedication to working with the body comes from our commitment to caring about humanity and working to achieve healing and emotional wellness. I'm here to learn from you, to learn what you're exploring and integrating into your life and professional practice. I am here to learn what else there is to learn from our history as we continue to grow and evolve. I am here to share my knowledge with others, and I am here because I believe in the life of the body. I am here because I have seen and experienced the profound effects of bioenergetic analysis. I am also here as your president to hear from you how you would like our organization to grow and to learn from you how you would like to contribute to your organization, the IIBA. So those are some of the reasons I'm here. Why are you here? What will stimulate you? What will you take with you? What do you want to get from this conference? As we gather here these next few days, we will be alive with love, healing, connection, and authenticity. Welcome to the bioenergetic view of love, healing, connection, and authenticity. Thank you. I forgot something. I'd like the scientific committee to stand up. First, Rosaria, as the head of the scientific committee. Okay, here we go. Paula. Bojigalupo. No, I didn't get it right. Bojigalupo. Galupa. Okay. Pedro Ribeiro de Silva. And then the other members of this, they were the three key people. Other members of the organization committee are António Ramos, Ana Botas. She's not here? Okay. And then the scientific committee consisted of Gary Coburn, our past president, Gary Coburn, Michael Brennan, Miriam Mantau, Margit Comeda.
We'll go on. I'm Pedro Ribeiro de Silva, as Diana said. I'm the president of the Portuguese Association, and we are very, very happy that you decided to come to Portugal to assist to this conference, because it was just 38 years ago that we have another conference exactly here. It was our former president, António Rocha, who organized it. So I also like to send him, I think it's not here, but to send him a big hug to organize it. Well, it's near the beach, it's a quiet place, and I think we can have a nice experience here and a good memory after. I would like to thank my colleagues from the Portuguese Association, so António that you already know, Anna that is not here, and also to thank the scientific committee, Rosaria, Paula, and Diana. We work a lot of Zoom conferences. It was not easy sometimes because, of course, we have different point of views, and so we have to discuss. Also, Nina Schubert, who made a wonderful job, always organizing everything. And also all the people from Abreu, Mr. Nuno Pinto, Maria Cardoso, and Mariana, Melanie, and Maria, and also people from the hotel. And now that we are here, we hope that you will find that it's a nice place, that we have a good experience. I also would like to thank Olaf Trapp. It's the president of the European Association of Bioenergetic Analysis. He accepted to come. Thank you for coming. Also to thank António Guerra, that is vice president of the Portuguese Federation of Psychotherapy. Also, thank you for coming and to accept the invitation. And finally, but not the last, the professor José Abreu Afonso. José Abreu Afonso is professor of psychology at the university. He's from psychoanalysis and group analysis. That it's also our root. But he has a discipline of psychotherapy. And in that discipline, that it's a long one, he teaches all the models. And he asks people from the models to go there to explain the models. So many of us from Bioenergetic went to his discipline to explain to the students what is bioenergetic. So I also want to thank you, Professor, for this opportunity to explain our model, and thank you also for coming. So now I pass the word and the floor to the president of the FEPPSI Psychotherapy Federation, Olaf Trapp.
Good afternoon. It's a great honor for me to stay here as a representative from the European Federation for Bioenergetic Analysis and to have this task to warmly welcome you all. Good afternoon. we all can have here some very wonderful days together among people who have this similar experiences with bioenergetic and with among people who share the same human values. More or less, all of us, we are on the same lifelong journey to deeper parts of ourselves, to our heart, to more truth, to more authenticity. And I would like to inspire you, to encourage you to help each other on this journey. Diana did already a nice little exercise to say hello to each other. I wanted to say, if you meet somebody in the conference you don't know, don't hesitate to say hello, to speak to each other, to connect to each other. Overcome your shyness. Now I got lost, but I'd say if you get lost during these days, yeah, it is sometimes the case. Just try to get a hug from somebody and you feel better. I would like to encourage you to enjoy the presentations as a presenter and as a participant. Ask for feedback and ask for giving feedback. I heard this sentence, feedback is the breakfast of the champions. Yeah? Regardless of this hierarchy and this organization, I deeply believe we all can learn from each other. Yeah? But I also want to remind you, stay fair, stay respectful and constructive in your criticism. I wish from my heart that we all together are able to create a safe atmosphere in this conference. A safe atmosphere that we can meet each other less armored than in our daily life. I think that's it what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olaf. Now I invite to come to the floor António Guerra, that is the Vice President of the Portuguese Federation of Psychotherapy, just to explain us a little bit how it works and what is the task of the Federation. Thank you, António.
I didn't brought my pillow, but I did, in fact, bring my notebook and my glasses. So, first of all, thank you very much for your invitation. It's indeed a very great pleasure to be here in this marvelous place near the beach with very expressive people like bioenergetic people are, very alive and full of applauses. It's incredible for me because our approaches are not so effusive like you are. Congratulations for that. So, I must say first of all that I'm the Vice President of Portuguese Federation of Psychotherapy in Portugal, but I also work with EAP, and I see here a lot of faces that I know from EAP. Usually they are there also, or even from EEBP. That's a pleasure to see these people here. So I think we can talk mainly not only about what Portuguese Federation is doing now in Portugal, but I also can explain or tell you what's happened in Europe concerning these problematics of psychotherapy. So, in fact, FEPPSI, it's a very new organization. We have the same problem in Portugal that in the rest of Europe, I think. And the problem is psychotherapists are not recognized as profession. In most of the countries of Europe, they are not recognized as professionals, and they must work as psychologists, psychoanalytics. Sorry if my English, it's very rusty. They work as medical doctors, nurses, etc. But in fact, they are working or they are making the work of psychotherapists. So in Europe, it's very difficult times now about this issue of psychotherapy and the way we can take in the future to solve these problems. Concerning Portugal, I can say that, in fact, we are a very new organization, but we represent 18 associations of different models. We have around 2,500 individual members from these associations. We have around 1,600 students only in Portugal. And we have more or less one idea about the practice here in Portugal. And we can say that in Portugal, each year, as practices of psychotherapy, we can have around 100,000 to 150,000 practices in psychotherapy. So only in Portugal. These are huge numbers concerning the size of the country. In Europe, it's much more expressive, but the problem remains because even with these numbers, we don't have legal protection. In Portugal, at least, we have no legal protection. In other countries of Europe, there are some legislation about this. For instance, Malta recognized recently this profession, and it's a very good step for us in Europe to have more power in the European Commission and Parliament to recognize this profession. So, in Portugal, we are developing a work mainly political now, and this is very important. I also can leave a message here that in each country of you, especially in Europe, you should develop political connections with your local politician, inside the parties, etc., to pursue this idea of the independence of the profession of psychotherapist. It's very important. Each one of us should make this work in your countries. By now, we have a lobby in Europe. EAP developed strategies for have a lobby, political lobby in Europe to pursue these objectives. We hope, in fact, we think that maybe in 3 or 4 years, if the things goes in this direction, maybe we can have a very good science and or even the recognition of the profession in Europe as European profession. By the other side, each country must develop their own strategies to implement this legislation. So, we have a lot of work to do. In fact, we are trying to promote psychotherapy not only through the good work that you are doing in your practices, in your associations. We are promoting also psychotherapy in the modern ways to promote the service of psychotherapy using what we have now, and we are talking about lobbying, marketing, etc., as a very good way to have these objectives achieved as soon as possible. Well, in Portugal, we are also working in the political level, and in fact, we could have the possibility, and we achieve it, to stop some acts of another professions connected with health that try to get the psychotherapy as their own field, and this was stopped in the parliament 2 years ago. So we are working hard to see if the next years we can have legislation for psychotherapy in Portugal. the problem here also is the fact that some of the psychotherapists are not medical doctors, nurses, psychologists, etc. So this is a very difficult field to defend among the politicians, because the idea is that psychotherapy only should be done by these professions. And this is not correct, because EAP defends in their statutes and its legislation that everyone can be a psychotherapist if they have the correct and the proper formation for this task, for this profession. So we are fighting in some different ways, trying to have all these pieces together to have in the future a profession of psychotherapy. I don't know if you have any questions. I don't know if this is correct place to questions. So mainly, this is what I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, António. Federation has made a wonderful job with 18 models together. It's not easy to discuss the scientific committee, the political committee, but I think it's the way to go forward and to defend psychotherapy. And now, Professor Gabriel Afonso, take the floor.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm going to read the paper. So my English is not so good and it's safer this way. I'm honored and grateful to have been invited to participate in the opening session of the 25th IIBA Conference and to have the opportunity to meet you, body psychotherapists, practitioners, and share some ideas about the presence of the body in the clinical activity of a talking cure practitioner as myself. Although we are family, due to our common origin, we have followed different paths in method and theoretical development. However, there is something fundamental that connects us. We both work in our own way, the body and the mind, or rather, the body-mind unit. As Pedro said when introducing me, I'm a psychoanalyst, and I am so with conviction. Notwithstanding, early in my career, I've realized that therapists use models. And models, no matter what, are just that. Partial attempts to understand the reality, too complex to be encompassed and constantly surpassing us. It is important that we believe in what we're doing and try to improve our methods. But as research has shown, it's not the model that makes the difference in the outcomes of psychotherapy. In the various institutions and in clinical training that I did in the early years of my career, I had contact with many different kinds of practices, and something that was fascinating was that we were always talking of different things, but that all shared something in common.
Sorry. You have to speak a little bit slower so they can translate. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Just a little slower. Sorry.
I'm a little bit pressed with the time, and so I'm trying to make it faster. And now I'm lost. I have always found fascinating how some ideas are transversal to them, although worked and thought in such different ways. And something I have learned from my clinical and supervisory activity is that the best model is always the one that gives the therapist a better understanding of him or herself. So, in this state of mind, I made my reflections, and I gained the courage to share it with you, an audience of body specialists. I will start by pointing out a feature of contemporary clinical field. Comparing the current clinical practice with classical Freudian neuroses and looking at psychoanalytic literature, we come across different ways of psychic suffering and psychopathology and its articulation with the body. physical sickness, somatization, acting, eating disorders, self-harm, self-mutilation, the several dependencies, body modifications, body art. In borderline patients, the perverse and disturbed behavior, the several sexual and gender conflicts, dissatisfaction, the lack of meaning for life. Very often the body appears to be the center, evidencing physical suffering that is also physical, psychic suffering that is also physical. The social transformations that we've been facing fed a new psychic economy in which the search for pleasure is more direct. In the postmodern consumerism machine, the body became a construction that can be transformed in the search for perfection or expression of individuality. By alienating itself from the erotic body that is built by the articulation between the language and the symbolic, the subjects seem to engineer display bodies in which the bodily erotism is presented as a call for its own recognition. The speed at which changes occur, the scientific and technological advancements led to the emergence of a lot of topics related to the body, as well as raised a lot of questions unimaginable decades ago. A society of non-workable excesses imposes to the individual an unreachable processing rhythm. It doesn't allow for the suffering to be manifested neurotically, forming representations and repressing it, arising in its place somatic manifestations, pre-symbolic, raw, that are closer to acting than from the symptom in its classical conceptualization. Then, the body is no longer a language. Instead, is an acting set, both in the motricity plan and the anatomo-physiologic one, by the sickening. Am I going too fast? Please, if I'm going too fast, Pedro, say something from here, because I'm not looking to the lady. Okay? What is the place of clinical psychoanalysis in today's world, so different from the one in which the method was created? Today, as always, we have to connect with the body presence in the session, listen to it, observe its language, respect its silences. As before, the body continues to speak, telling us what is otherwise impossible to say. Listening to the manifestating body, the psychoanalyst searches for the non-said and its hidden meanings. Our job is to give the voice and the word, so that the silent body becomes a speaking one. Now I'm going to skip a part of my presentation because we have no time for it, but it's also the most boring one, I think, because it was about the body in psychoanalytic theory. So I will skip that one, okay? Maybe just to say that the integration of the body and the psychic is a final line of development that cannot be taken for granted or definitive. Just that. I think it's enough. Now, I will talk about the matter of psychoanalysis and the bodies in psychoanalysis, the body of the patient, but also the body of the analyst. Simplifying, but digging into the fundamental, psychoanalysis deals with suffering, with pain. This word, charged with ambiguity, binds intrinsically the body and the mind. There are words that clearly refer to feelings like envy or guilt. However, if we don't clearly specify the source of the pain, it will remain unknown to the listener. it's a good word to show how difficult it is to establish boundaries in this field and how psychosoma is an irreducible unit present in the clinic. Emotions would have no consistency without a body supporting them. And there are also many levels in the manifestation of the body, from physical support to communication, through voice, facial and body expression, somatic manifestations of emotion, laughter and crying. On the other hand, the body is a container of parts of the mind that the mind itself cannot contain. There are many different forms of physical sensations manifesting in the consulting room. Almost physical, in raw, incoherent forms, or those that appear symbolically in daydreams and dreams. However, they are always manifestations of the psychosomatic. Its mode of representation, symbolic function, symbolic and proto-symbolic equation coexist, and its dominance depends on the internal and external vicissitudes. It is true that the body has always been present in psychoanalytic literature, but the body was mainly the patient's body. In the one-to-one perspective of classical psychoanalysis, the material brought by the patient was mainly seen as communicating aspects of his or her fantasies and conflicts, which would be thought by the analyst and transmitted by interpretation. More contemporary tendencies broaden the perspective. The influence of the analyst on the analysand has been increasingly studied, especially thanks to the intersubjective models that focus on the dyad. Gubb talks about embodying the analyst, emphasizing the inescapable presence of two physical bodies in the therapist's office, bringing this to a psychic significance. She draws attention to the need to value how patient engages in this reality of the therapist. The awareness of the impact of the analyst's body raises many interesting questions. The asymmetrical therapeutic relationship in which the patient reveals him or herself and the analyst does not puts him or her in a place of curiosity. The body is a meaningful presence that allows the patient to individuate the analyst, becoming so a natural means for obtaining information about him or her. This matter becomes particularly prominent at the times where there are visible changes in the analyst's body, for example, during pregnancy, illness, or change of look. The meanings are unique and individual and can be used to express patients' intolerable feelings that can thus be spoken in the session. Lima examines if it wouldn't be useful to consider the body of the analyst as part of the setting. The looks, the way of dressing, moving, talking, looking, greeting, and saying goodbye are sensorial characteristics of the setting. Mostly, patients who develop symbiotic transfers and those whose anxieties are linked to an indifferentiation from the object need to relate the body of the therapist as an invariant of the setting. Lima uses the expression embodied setting to underline two things. The first is the physical appearance and the sensorial presence of the analyst, that by being embodied part of the containment evokes fantasies and specific anxieties. The second is the somatic countertransference in his or her body. It's a kind of body-free association to listen to the patient. The analysis operates in a lot of levels. The psychoanalyst that has the role of thinking, using his or her mind to understand. It's all right? Yes. Am I going too fast? Okay. Okay. So, particularly when we relate to primitive and psychotic aspects, we should be aware of what is going on in our mind and our body in the here and now of the session. The emotion of the patient provokes an emotional and physical resonance. The body somehow feels and generates a subjective ego state when in resonance with another body. The analyst tries to understand subjectively the phenomenon that is being experienced, try to put him or herself in the position of observer, and translate the experience into something understandable and communicable to the patient. He or she perceives his or her body sensations, feelings, without knowing its real meaning. As in the process of infant development, there are ways of representation that will translate the subjective experiences into an understandable reading. We understand that the analytical process can be, in a way, a potential threat to the analyst's health, as his or her body is permanently requested for psychic metabolization. And none of that is contradictory with dealing with psychoanalysis as a talking cure, because the search for the speech evokes the body and the roots of knowledge are connected to it. What is worked in the analytic process touches the limits of the soma and the psychic, which implicates that the working through is based on a continued stimulation of the drives. And I will finish by considering the verbal technique of psychoanalysis and the integration of the body in that spoken technique. When the parents talk to their baby, the words include rhythm, voice tone, look, physical contact. As a child produces the first sounds, it does it in relation with someone. The internal and the external, the borders of the self and the other begin to form. There will always be a connection between body and language. In the analytical relation, this relational matrix is relieved. Talking is a sort of thinking, and at the same time, talking creates new ways of thinking. It involves another, not just imaginary, but real. The activation of symbolic aspects in the speech awakes desires and unconscious fantasies in relation to the object. The speech for itself involves the concrete and the sensorial body of the speaker and the listener. Not being related to sensations and emotions, speech would be something dead. Christiansen talks about full language, proposing that in psychoanalysis there's a double movement from the body to the language and from the language to the body. This idea is particularly important to understand patients that live their bodies as separated from the mind, and that along the process start to be able to feel pain, anxiety, desire, and also connecting to the thoughts and to bodily and emotional feelings. Classically, the speech in psychoanalysis through free association was seen as the possibility to create and change create new and change old in the interpsychic dynamic. The question that we are currently interested in is if our technique also increases the perception of affection, bodily sensations, and the sensory. Today, there's a growing attention to the body language, affect, countertransference, action, enactment, moments of meeting, all of the non-verbal acts of communication in psychoanalytical process. We assume a paradox. We invite the patient to say everything as freely as possible, but at the same time, we know that a big part of what we are trying to achieve cannot be described by words. The psychoanalysis confronts us with the distance and intimacy, or the intimate connection between the body and the language. We are a body, and simultaneously we think about it. Thank you very much. And a big story for the translators.
Thank you. So Diana guest talk in her speech that it is important, the diversity. And it's interesting how models can be so different. So we are much more energetic in our, so it's interesting. Thank you for your speech, because we can also have some theory that it's from your model. Well, now we have a wonderful moment of music. It happens that Rosaria loves music. I also love music, but when we are together, we talk a lot of music, Italian music and so, but Rosaria decided since the beginning of our enterprise to have a moment of music. So now, warm applause to Katia Eulilia Claudino.
Convidei a comadre Sebastiana pra dançar um chachado na Paraíba. Ela veio com a dança diferente e pulava que só uma guariba. Ela veio com a dança diferente e pulava que só uma guariba. E gritava